Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Magic Is This? A special episode, so to speak. I don't know if everybody is aware, but I'm having some major technical issues with my laptop, the one that I normally record the episodes on. It has started to malfunction in a very big way. I won't get into the details of it, but right now it is in hospital trying to be fixed. I asked the fairies to maybe intervene, and they did not, so I have to take it to a technomancer, and we'll see what happens there, which is unfortunate because I just finished recording an episode, and then all of this garbage started happening. So right now I'm recording this episode on a computer that was bought probably in 2006, 2007 maybe. Anyways, it's very old, and I'm using an editing program that is just as old, if not older. So this isn't going to be a normal episode, obviously. I just wanted to get something out there so I don't have everybody waiting around, waiting for the next episode. So I'm going to try and rush this out here as quick as I can. This episode is going to be about me, but more specifically, how I came to be a magician and what got me there. And then at the very end of the episodes, there's going to be some questions regarding magic that I asked you to ask, and we'll definitely go through those questions. So I was a very different child. I had lots of imagination. I also seemed to know that what we constitute reality, or what constitutes reality, wasn't the whole picture. Such things were very apparent to me. I felt things differently. I saw things differently. I even heard things. I had various mental health issues also growing up, anxiety and depression, and yeah, I was a bit of a mess growing up. Thankfully, I had very loving parents that helped me through a lot of this, and I can't say enough about them. But they definitely had a very different child, and it was not a normal childhood in that sense. But I did love being outside. I loved nature, as I've mentioned before, and I loved using my imagination and getting out there and being just alone. I really enjoyed nothing more than being alone or with my dog. But again, I thought somehow this thing called life, there was definitely more to it. So early rumblings. When I was in grade 6, somebody brought into science class, actually brought in a deck of tarot cards. It was the Aquarian Tarot, of all things, and I was fascinated with this. I could not get enough of these cards. Eventually, I saved up enough of my allowance over a period of about 3 or 4 weeks and offered, I don't know, it was probably $40 or $50 to buy this tarot deck off of this other student. And eventually that happened, and I don't know what happened to those cards. Something did, but I have a replacement. But I just absolutely adored the tarot. When I was in grade, I think 10 or 9, I was a huge horror movie fan. I loved horror movies. My favorite horror movies were the Evil Dead trilogy. Evil Dead 1, The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and Army of Darkness. And in that, they had what's called the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, which was the Book of the Dead. And one of my friends mentioned that, hey man, just so you know, the Necronomicon is a real thing. I went, what? And I went out to what was kind of the local not local, but it was the big department bookstore in Canada at the time, was called Chapters, and they had a copy of the Necronomicon. Well, it turns out it was the Simonomicon, but I loved this thing. I would flip through it, and it had all these seals and sigils, and it had the story of Abdul al-Hazred, the mad Arab, and through this, I learned about Aleister Crowley and H.P. Lovecraft specifically. That was a really early thing that happened to me. Aleister Crowley was kind of always in the background, strangely enough. There were books at the library, the local library and school libraries. I forget who put them out, but it was either Time Life. But they're these giant black books, and I think there was like 20 of them. They would be on psychic powers or UFOs or Bigfoot or the supernatural. And his name just constantly seemed to be coming up. Aleister Crowley's name just always comes up. And eventually I read I read his biography, "Do What Thou Wilt," one of the least good biographies of him, but I remember reading that in an early age. As mentioned in my Carl Jung episode, I became very interested in him through Robertson Davies, and that was very early on in my mid-teens. When I got into grade 12, I was told to read Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. I think my teachers knew that I was different than other kids as well, and they would try to suggest, they were really trying to help, and bless them. My grade 11 teacher, Mr. Heaney, was the one who told me to look up Carl Jung and research him through Fifth Business. And my other teacher in grade 12, Mr. Ozachowski, he told me to look into Buddhism and Siddhartha. You can guess which of the two of them that won out in the end. Anyways, after high school, I became very jaded, very materialist. It was only cold science. It was only matter. And I really got into punk rock music. Eventually, I tried to get away from the situation that was in Alberta at the time. So I moved to Toronto and went to school for a little bit there, but there was really no kind of magical thinking happening at any point in this time. I was all about reality, the coldness of reality and the starkness of it. It was really appealing to me, unfortunately. Eventually, I moved back to Alberta, and I worked in a video store in Calgary called Casablanca Video. It was kind of the place to go when you need that foreign film that was somebody talked about in university, and you had to go see it, or the strange kind of cult films, that kind of place. And we would get DVDs before their actual release date, so we would be able to see videos before the public did. And back in, I think it was 2002, there was a DVD that came into the shop called Disinformation, the complete series. And it was a series of 2 DVDs. And I knew about disinformation through a website much earlier. I was kind of in tune to the whole apocalyptic culture, or apocalypse culture, and they were big in kind of selling that kind of thing. But this was the first I'd heard that they'd made a TV show that was aired on Channel 4 for, I think, 1 or 2 episodes before it was eventually canceled. It was too hot for TV kind of thing. Anyways, I don't know why, but I brought the DVD home. It looked cool enough, and there was a little devil on the cover kind of thing, so why not give it a shot? And I liked the show. It's kind of, in fact, it's a wonderful slice of late 90s, early 2000s apocalyptic culture. It's an interesting little DVD, to say the least. There's a segment on the TV show about Satanism that is one of the greatest things ever. It is funnier than a lot of comedy shows that were around at the time. It feels almost exactly like a Mr. Show sketch, if anybody's familiar with that. Go and find that, seek it out. It's really great. But the Satanist segment on that TV show is great. But if there is one person to blame for my magical career, or if there's one person that's the greatest that kind of opened the door for me, it would be Richard Metzger, who was the guiding force of Disinformation, the company. On the second disc of this DVD was a disc called Disinfocon. And it was a group of guests that they put in a large theater in New York. People like Kenneth Anger, Douglas Rushkoff, Joe Coleman, Adam Parfait, Kembra Fowler, but most importantly, Grant Morrison and Robert Anton Wilson. And it was just the video of each person's little segment and each little lecture, and it's good. I liked Robert Anton Wilson well enough at the time, but it was actually Grant Morrison's lecture that really did me in. He talks about magic, sigils, and consciousness, and all of that good stuff. He actually dropped acid right before going on stage, which is, that's pretty cool as well. So I brought this DVD home, and I would watch it, and it wasn't until I watched the second disc that I was like, oh, there's something here. So every night, for about 5 nights, I would watch these 2 segments. It was Grant Morrison's specifically, but also Robert Anton Wilson, right before going to bed. And then I would go to bed, and I had the most vivid dreams I've ever had. Before this point, I had not had dreams like this. I haven't had dreams like this since. They were those dreams that were more real than life. It was more profound than anything I'd experienced up until this point. It was nearly a spiritual experience, how vivid and great these dreams were. And they were kind of saying to me, like, look, this is where you've got to go. There's something here. And so I listened to that. So and yeah, just for this small time, eventually I had to give the DVD back, but I went to the local record store and bought the DVD. And in fact, when I brought it up to the cashier, he said one thing. He just said, "Nice." So he seemed to know. I liked this direction that disinformation was trying to sell to me, and I found out that the disinformation company was just about to release a book called the Disinformation Book of Lies, which was a book about magic specifically. And so I went to a totally different giant bookstore, which was Indigo, also in Canada, and bought this book. And I just dove in. I loved everything about this book. It went into, it had articles by Genesis P-Orridge in it, and things about Robert Anton Wilson, things about Aleister Crowley in there, William Burroughs, Brian Geisen, that kind of thing. And in and around this time, eventually I moved to Edmonton, Alberta to start a film production company. More on that further on down the line. And again, with Robert Anton Wilson, while I was there, one of the first things that I did in Edmonton was bought a book at the local weird, curious occult shop called Sanctuary. I bought Cosmic Trigger 1 by Robert Anton Wilson. So I started to take this stuff very, very seriously. The first part of the Book of Lies is a little segment there by Grant Morrison called Pop Magic. Magic with a K, obviously, because that's what the cool kids do. And in it, he kind of goes through how to do sigils. He talked about it a bit in the DisinfoCon DVD, but this was in writing, so I could actually follow it. And it's simple enough. And so I started to take this seriously. And so I did a couple of sigils. I did about 5 of them. And they all came true very quickly. But it also made me, in retrospect, very aware of be careful what you wish for, as I had a huge fallout from my sigils, which had ramifications long after for the next couple of years. So that's basically how my magic whole shindig got started. And after that, I was definitely all in the world of chaos magic. Peter Carroll, Phil Hine, I would never say that I was a very great chaos magician. I was actually quite a lazy chaos magician. I was doing magic for all the wrong reasons. Eventually, I found Alan Moore, who I'd read before. In fact, a friend from Casablanca Video lent me. First of all, it was V for Vendetta, which blew my mind, and then Watchmen, which it looked like a stupid superhero book, and I didn't want to read a stupid superhero book. But then I read it, and I was like, oh shit, this guy knows, like, this is the greatest thing I've ever read. It was unbelievable. But I found out that Alan Moore was a magician. And he was writing, at the time, a comic book about magic. So I got Promethea, and I loved it. It was really great. But this kind of shifted me away from chaos magic, and I got far into Golden Dawn, Hermetic Kabbalah style magic. And this was kind of my thing for about a year and a half. And then from there, I drifted to Aleister Crowley and Thelema, the whole Libra 7/7 and Sephir Sephiroth. That was kind of where I stood for another couple of years. Eventually, I discovered Enochian magic. John Dee, who to this day I think is actually quite an unbelievable person. And through him, of course, you have to have Lon Milo Duquette in there. And eventually, that kind of drifted away. And then I got into Hermeticism and alchemy. I more like the figurative side of alchemy, not so much the technical side. But then armchair magician kind of thing. So I found it nice. It was good. But this kind of stuff, especially Enochian magic, it worked well enough. But I became bored with it, and the results were not very big. So this kind of was my magical life for a little bit of time, and I was stuck. I was stuck in Edmonton, and I was stuck in life, and I was stuck in magic. So I decided to move to Toronto. and I wanted to move forward in some way. When I first got to Toronto, I was still dabbling with a lot of the tarot and Hermetic Kabbalah, but the results still sucked. They weren't very good at all. And then eventually a confluence of things happened. Lon Milo Duquette, who I'd known for several years, read his books, but I never actually read his autobiographies. I believe My Life with the Spirits and Low Magic. Why would I want to read a magician that's still alive? Why do I want to read his autobiography? Anyways, stupid me. I read both of them, and then the Cunning Man's Handbook came out, and a book by Gordon White called The Chaos Protocols. They kind of all came together at the same time, and just was pointing me, because they all kind of dealt with the Goetia and with grimoires, so they kind of pointed me that way. And I had to admit to myself, I've never done grimoire magic or goetic magic. And at the time, I guess it's kind of the tail end, or it might be in the middle of it still, but I was always late to the party. But there's the grimoire renaissance was happening. You had guys like Jake Stratton Kent and Scarlet Imprint releasing books. Eventually, I found out that grimoire magic was everything that I wanted from magic. This was real magical efficacy. So I've been kind of there ever since. So at this point, am I a chaos magician again? I'm not sure. Probably. I think most magicians kind of move in that direction eventually. I don't know. I've used the words syncretic cultist, or I practice anarchic magic, which I think is something that Mitch Horowitz talked about. But nowadays, I just call myself a magician. I'm just a magician, but it's a lot of grimoires, and of course, this is not my whole story of magic or my whole story of my life. There's much more to that. I seem to have lived at least 8 lives by this point. But stick around, listen to the podcast, and you'll find out much more about me as the show unfolds. So I asked people for questions, and I got some. So this is a question from Agrab Eovum from Helsinki, of all places, another cold place like Canada. Do I rely on the Goldie Oldies, Kabbalistic, angelic, Solomonic magic, or are you looking for more modern/futurist ways of doing same old stuff? He also brings up cyberpunker, transhumanist ways. Kabbalah, less so with every year. Specifically, the Golden Dawn, Eliphas Levi tropes they're inefficient for me, knowing just how much they got wrong. And I liked the impetus as to why these guys kind of sought this, especially the Golden Dawn, why they sought this kind of magic running through the British Museum at the point. But I just know too much about how they came to these conclusions and how they structured their magic. It just doesn't. It's slowly sliding away. As much as I love Kabbalah, if you do Kabbalah, like, you kind of have to do Kabbalah for the rest of your life, I think. Angelic magic. Every once in a while, Enochian was so patently John Dee's idiosyncratic blending of magic that it worked absolute wonders for him, obviously. Less so for me. But although I did get very good results, fleeting but good results from Aaron Leitch's Enochian Grimoire. So, yeah, angelic magic, a little bit more so than Kabbalah. Solomonic magic is my jam, as I mentioned, specifically the Hygromantia. With all these things, the Kabbalah, angelic magic, Solomonic magic, you should know these things. It's not that I would say to people, don't even get involved, but I think you need to know this stuff and judge for yourself what the results are and go with what works best for you. I know everybody says this, but I'm just repeating it. It really is essential. And Grimoires really ticked all the boxes for me, and the Goetia as well is kind of where I'm at right now. It doesn't mean I'm going to stay there, but grimoires, they seem to be the gift that keeps on giving, and Dr. Stephen Skinner calls it a tradition of rediscovery. I think will be a constant researching of the new texts that come out that will add to this rich tapestry of magic. I'm just chomping at the bit for Scarlet Imprint's It's going to be released, I believe, at the end of 2019 this year. An excellent book on the art of magic by Humphrey Gilbert and John Davis. It's from the manuscript in the British Library 36674, and I've heard about it for absolute years, but this will be the first time it'll be published. So I'll be diving really deep on that one as soon as it's released, and I can't wait until it's published. As far as technology, I am always cautious of new magic, strangely enough. But it is something comes out and I get a good feeling about it, I can't help but try it out. That's just the way that I am. And if it works, and I add it. If it doesn't, then I'll just, into the bin for you for now. But as for magic and new technology mixing, I always go back to the spirits. And I'm wondering what kind of spirit manifests from or in a machine, if any at all, or what was their agency, right? And that's kind of where I stand. So I'm reservedly cautious about such things, but if new technology comes out that aids your magic, take a distance look and then proceed. That being said, technology certainly has made my magic easier to do. That's without a doubt, 100%. But Gordon White once said, and I absolutely love this, use the digital to analog your life. And I try to stick with that, as it is, I believe, is very pertinent advice in this day and age. Transhumanism, I'm not down with that. I get most of my magic from life or from an animist perspective. Transhumanism, it won't work because it doesn't work, and vice versa. So, yeah, I'm not too down with the transhumanism. But if you can blend your magic in some kind of a really cool cyberpunk way, make it a nice little mesh of technology and magic, I say go for it. The sky's the limit. But I will throw out this anecdote. Once the time was right and everything was perfect, and I should have, I needed to scry, but I didn't have my scry mirror with you. I believe I was in Mexico at the time. I tried to use my iPad, which when it's black, it's pretty, or when it's off, it's pretty dark, and it's a first generation iPad, so it's only good for reading and nothing else. Like I can't even check my email on this thing. It's only a repository for books, and I've got tons of books on there. But I used that in place of a black mirror. So Charlie Brooker fans, please take note. Suffice to say, I did not like the things that I saw from this scrying, and it seemed like the Greco-Egyptian deity that I invoked for it. I didn't like it either, at all. There was some odd phenomenon happened, and odd enough that, and strange, and almost scary enough that even the people that I was staying with were like, "What is going on?" And I was just going, "I don't know." So there you go. You should read Technosis by Eric Davis. It's a very good book. It was written, I believe, in the mid-'90s, kind of as people said, well, what if this whole magic thing and technology blends? But read Technosis by him. It's very good. But you do you, homie. Do whatever comes, and if it comes to you, that's kind of the whole point, man. Go for it. And thank you for listening. That's very, very, very kind of you. And stick around. I got 2 questions from Marlon. Do you think there's still a lot you don't know about magic? Can one know enough? I know so little about magic. Magic is such a huge canvas, and I'm really only very versed in a small segment of that canvas. Like, I'm very sussed when it comes to Western magic, but that's not all the magic in the world. There's Indian, Chinese, African, Afro-Caribbean, South American, although I do know a bit about Quimbanda, because that shit is sexy as hell. There's Russian magic. It's all over the world. There's too much for one lifetime. Can we know enough? No. Yeah, keep learning, keep trying things out. Bring as much in as you can, but but realize what actually works for you. It's Liberty Hall and the Temple of Magic, or as Jung said, and this is my go-to regarding this question, a question of this sort: there is no linear evolution, only a circumambulation of the self. So never stop moving that self around the Temple of Magic, which I think is kind of the point of this whole episode. You're right. There you go. Marlon's second question is, can magic be produced in everyday life? Meaning, is it figurative, like having a magical feeling, being in a magical place? That's kind of the whole point of magic. Producing it, right? Witnessing it in everyday life. Is it figurative? It can be, but as I've mentioned before, I consider the subjective in some way objective, and magic helps me make the figurative literal and the unreal real. I'm enchanting my life and my world with magic. The rituals I do, however, are just, they're not just imaginary. They're not just for imaginary purposes. They are real to me, and the things that I see, hear, feel are seemingly, literally, scarily so sometimes real. Like this, if you're asking me if it's all in the mind, then I would say certainly not. Not with the things that I've done, and there are real world consequences for certain things, real spooky phenomena. Again, poltergeists and objects moving, that kind of stuff. So it's enough to drive somebody crazy. In fact, and a lot of people do go crazy when they dabble in the occult. I know a huge swath of people consider magic the dissolution of the ego and getting to a contemplative space and all of that, which is fine. I thought that was the point of magic myself for a few years. Then I changed, and now it's definitely more to do with spells and working with spirits and psi effects. That's PSI, psi effects. All that good shit that everybody is telling the world only exists in fantasy and science fiction. It doesn't. So funny that. A couple of questions here from the Scrouse. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. He asks, of all the different branches of magic, how important is it to choose one over doing a chaos-style / postmodern pastiche? And why bother with any of it when Norman Vincent Pealeism seems so damn effective? Well, I think at the beginning you should be a bit more of a chaos magician. Be a magical omnivore. Try as many different styles as you want. And if you find one to be more effective or even beautiful, pleasing to you, then definitely you can hone things down. I can't really offer advice. I can only tell you what I did. And the way that I started again was, I was a chaos magician. Then I tried to go into that more pointed direction, kind of the more, I guess, noble hermetic side, and then I kind of came out on the other side being like, I think I should try and involve as many different forms of magic as possible for my effectiveness and my efficacy, because that's just who I am. I enjoy learning. I need to learn, and I need to bring in new ideas and new concepts to keep me going. And I find that very, very helpful. But there are some things that, and people that do one form of magic and are very good at them, those are some of the most interesting people that you can read their writings, because it's very, very cool. And you can find the little kernels of things that you like and bring it into your magic if you find it the whole idea not your thing. But there's definitely good little nuggets in there that you can take and pilfer for yourself, which is always a very, very good thing. Why bother with any of it when Norman Vincent Pealeism is so effective? People don't know Norman Vincent Peale he was huge into New Thought and positivism. He was Donald Trump actually went to his church in New York City, and yeah, he is extremely effective. Well, here's the thing. If we think that effectiveness has to do with, a lot of material gains and this kind of thing, then yeah, he's quite effective. I think that the thing for me, I find spirits cool. I find psi effects cool. That's kind of where I want to put my magic, and I found forms that's not New Thought that allow me to access these things. Magicians these days, I think they definitely have to come to terms, or at least have some kind of an opinion, or do some kind of work with New Thought or positivism. Read the books of Mitch Horowitz. I believe it's One Simple Idea or A Simple Idea, and especially the Miracle Club. If people haven't read that already, pick up the Miracle Club. I think that's a great gateway in this day and age. If you want to read a current contemporary book that can kind of get you in the whole magical direction, Except No Substitute, that's a really great book. It also, Norman Vincent Peale is good. I don't find him that eloquent, but Neville Goddard, who I believe Mitch Horowitz is real big on, he's got some great stuff as well. At Your Command is a really short but very interesting book. I like his direction and where he's going there. Question 2, how to choose a god, goddess, saint, per animal, or guide? Or do they choose you, and how do you know? And then what? A newcomer might ask, I got a tiger and St. Michael. Now what do I do? saints are totally great in this regard because they usually have a matching animal. Saint Roch was injured and put himself in a cave, and a dog would bring him pieces of bread, and he nursed himself back into health in this regard. Saint Francis of Assisi, when nobody would listen to him preach, he would preach to the birds, so that he has birds going there. Your specific example of Saint Michael and the tiger, Saint Michael is all about protection, and if you've ever seen the BBC documentary, I believe it was released last year, called Dynasties, one of the episodes was about tigers in India, specifically a female tiger, and her protecting her cubs, so there's something there. Gods, Odin has his ravens, and yeah, they do exist. You have to find the matches. Now, what to do with them? Well, the thing that I tend to do is offering. So before a ritual or a spell, I will leave an offering. So if I'm going to be using St. Francis as an example, I will go to a cemetery or I'll go to a certain place and I'll leave some seeds or something for the birds to eat in a place that's out of the reach of squirrels. Say, damn those blasted squirrels. If you have, St. Roch, a dog, go to the animal shelter beforehand and give them some love. Go to your friend's place, give the dog some food. For things like tigers, well, might I suggest leaving a donation to the zoo in question that's closest to you that has tigers? That kind of thing. The sky's the limit, so go wild, literally. There you go. Wonderful questions. Awesome. Thank you so much. Last question here is from Jim. What number am I thinking of? All right, so here we go. I want everybody to join in with this ritual. I want you to everybody go grab yourself a calculator, and not the calculator on your phone. This is magic. You have to take it seriously. I want you to get the proper tools. If you want a spell to go properly or a ritual to go properly, you have to get the proper tools. All right, so let's go. So I've got a calculator right there. I want you guys to go and grab your own calculators and follow along here. So here we go. I'm gonna light some incense. All right, there we go. All right, there we go. Is everybody ready? So what number am I thinking of? All right, here we go. I'm going to do a short Orphic hymn here before I go ahead. So, I call upon Daemon, the grand and the dreaded leader, gentle Zeus, who gives birth to all, who gives livelihood to mortals, great Zeus, wide-roving, avenger, king of all, giver of wealth when you enter the house in the abundance of your powers. Show me the divine prophecies of heaven through the medium of this device. All right. Okay. Oh, my hands are moving. Okay. All right. Okay, spell's over. All right, there we go. A little banishing ritual. Malo, Malasai, Ophidai, Theolocum, Malkoth, Eta, Vegobora, Vegodula, Olahim. Amen. Anyways. All right, I'm going to take a look at this calculator. All right, Jim, you ready? So here is the number you are thinking of. It is 80,085. 80085. So everybody following at home, please put that into your old calculator. It can't be a TI-83, can't be your phone, but please put that in and have a look at the results of the spell. So there you are, Jim. That is the number that you were thinking of. And that's the episode, everybody. So hopefully we'll get back to regular podcasting in the next few days. But, I really await the fate of my computer. In the meantime, say a prayer for it. I don't know. But it's a stupid bastard device. But I do rely on it to get these episodes out. So thanks for listening, everybody. And thank you to everybody who left questions. You guys mean the world to me. And your comments mean the world to me as well. Head to whatmagicisthis.com. You can find Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find show notes there. They're really great. I'm proud of the show notes. Of all the things I do, I just love the show notes that I go. I spend hours on that stuff. And I don't just put stuff up. I actually read all of it. Anyways, you can go to iTunes. You can find my Google Play there. You can find out how to download the podcast on Android devices. Spotify is on there. Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public. If they've got podcasts, I'm there. I'm there for sure. And with that, we will end the episode. So thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully we'll get back to the regular scheduled every 10 days, once a decade, releasing of the podcast episode kind of thing. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.